Welcome to The Explainer. Today we are going on an incredible journey, one that started millions and millions of years ago. We're going to uncover the story of the ancient energy that's buried deep within our planet, the fuels that literally power our modern world. Okay, so let's just dive right in. When you flip a light switch or you fill up your car with gas, where does that energy really come from? Well, it didn't just magically appear. The story actually starts long before humans ever walked the Earth, with ancient life and just immense geological forces. You see, the answer is hidden deep inside the Earth, in what we call natural resources. The best way to think about them is like the planet's own rechargeable, and sometimes not so rechargeable, batteries. And they basically come in two very different types. So on one hand, we've got inexhaustible resources, things like sunshine and wind that, we just can't use up. But for the last couple of centuries, our entire civilization has been built on the other kind, exhaustible resources. And the name says it all. There's only a limited amount of them. We call these exhaustible resources fossil fuels. And that name is absolutely perfect, because they are literally the stored up energy from ancient fossilized life. We're talking plants and animals that got buried and completely transformed deep within the Earth's crust over eons. All right, let's start with the first of these ancient fuels, and it is a big one, coal. This black rock that we all know, well, it's essentially buried sunshine. It's the super compressed remains of ancient green forests that soaked up the sun's energy through photosynthesis millions of years ago. I mean, just try to imagine it for a second. These huge, prehistoric swamps and forests were thriving, then they died, and then, thanks to natural processes like floods or landslides, they got buried. Layer after layer of soil, mud, and rock piled on top, trapping all that amazing solar energy deep underground. So this super slow, high-pressure cooking process, it's called carbonization. Here's how it goes down. First, all that dead plant stuff gets buried. Then all the layers piling on top create this immense pressure, squeezing all the water out. Finally, you add the intense heat from deep underground, and that transforms what's left, concentrating the carbon until bam, it becomes the energy-packed rock we know as coal. But we don't always just throw raw coal into a furnace. To really unlock everything it has to offer, we often heat it up in a place with no air. This process, it's called destructive distillation, and it breaks the coal down into some incredibly useful stuff. What you're looking at here is pretty much a mini version of that process. When you heat the coal, it drives off all these gases and liquids. What's left behind is a super pure form of carbon called coke, which is absolutely essential for making steel, along with things like coal tar and coal gas, which are themselves fuels and key ingredients for manufacturing. Okay, so now let's leave those ancient forests behind and travel out to the ancient oceans. The story of petroleum and natural gas is basically liquid history. It wasn't formed from big trees, but from countless tiny little organisms that used to swim in prehistoric seas. And just like with coal, the recipe is pretty much the same. You need a ton of time, a lot of heat, and immense pressure. But this time, that recipe was working on the remains of tiny marine plants and animals. As they got buried deeper and deeper under sand and clay, the lack of air and the intense conditions transformed them into crude oil and natural gas. Now, the stuff we actually pump out of the ground is crude oil, this thick, black, sludgy liquid. And honestly, by itself, it's not all that useful. The real magic happens inside an oil refinery through a process called fractional distillation. Okay, this is so cool. Inside a giant tower, the crude oil gets heated up and it starts to separate. Think of it like a skyscraper for molecules. The lighter stuff with low boiling points, like gasoline, vaporizes and rises all the way to the top. Meanwhile, the heavier gunk with high boiling points, like diesel fuel or bitumen for paving roads, stays way down at the bottom. Trapped right alongside that oil, we often find natural gas. And when you compress it, you get CNG. Now, you'll often hear it called a cleaner fossil fuel. Why? Well, it's mostly methane, which is a simpler molecule. So when it burns more completely. And that means it produces less harmful pollution than, say, gasoline or diesel. So it's pretty clear, right? These ancient fuels, they built our entire modern industrial world. But this incredible energy journey, a journey that was millions of years in the making, well, it comes with a pretty significant cost. There's a catch. I mean, just look at this chart. It shows you just how deep fossil fuels run in our society. Industries, our homes, our cars and buses, even our farms. Almost every single part of modern life is built around this ancient stored energy. We are completely and totally reliant on it. And this is where the story takes a turn. Burning all this stuff on such a massive scale has two huge consequences. First, there's severe air pollution, which directly hurts our health. And second, there's global warming, which is changing the climate of our entire planet. And this brings us right back to that fundamental truth we talked about. These resources are exhaustible. They are going to run out. At the rate we're using it now, some estimates suggest the world's known coal reserves could be gone in about 100 years. That's it. But this is even more startling. The timeline for petroleum, the lifeblood of our cars, our planes, our entire global economy, is even shorter. Estimates suggest that at our current rate, we could be facing a critical shortage in as little as 40 years. Think about that. That's within the lifetime of most people listening right now. And that leaves us with a massive, and I mean massive, question. We have built our entire world on an inheritance of energy, one that was stored away millions of years ago. As that inheritance starts to run dry, we have to decide what's next. We built our world on yesterday's energy, so what are we going to build tomorrow's on?